All right, friend, we are live. We're doing it again. It's so
Oh
good to
my
see
gosh.
you.
This is awesome. I love it. I get so excited
I know.
knowing that it's our week to do a show.
I know. Me too. Me too. It's so good to see you. And I am so excited about this conversation today.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I almost feel like we need the rest of the day to complete it, but that's okay. That's what part two, maybe part three is about. Actually, that's what Built a Bridge is about.
Yeah, exactly. So let me just jump into the goal then really quick, and then that would be a perfect segue. I do want to just say I know that there's been some issues with LinkedIn today, but worst case, if there's interruptions, we'll post the recording, so hopefully others can just kind of tune in case there are some issues. But all right, so the goal of the show. So want to make sure that we always start by sharing that at the top of every show, just in case you're new joining us for the first time. But ultimately, the goal that we've designed is this. We want to bring people with different backgrounds and unique experiences together to build bridges that connect all the minds. So Christine is a life coach for women. I myself, Colleen, am a fractional chief well-being officer to small businesses. And united, we offer different perspectives on wellness, culture, and life fulfillment, both at work and in our personal lives. And what we really want to do is we want to share necessary and sensitive stories that evolve around these topics and invite you to open your mind in order to connect with all the minds.
Awesome.
Turn it over to you, friend.
I love that. I love that. So, oh my gosh. So, as we already kind of went through, today's show is intense. We have so much to talk about. We have so many feelings around it. And actually, that's why we decided yesterday that this will have to be part one, whether it's part one of part two or part one of part three. We're not sure, but we're just going to roll with it. And also, please feel free during our show, write in your comments. So if there are things that you really resonate with, that you want us to talk more about in part two or part three, let us know. This is about us bringing ourselves to you, but then we want to be responsive to you. So just saying that. So today's show, part one of why workplace atmosphere and life coaching are our core focus. And it's particularly special to Colleen and I because our career choices are a choosing of passion and deep care for each one of us. We have both arrived at our place in the present due to broken promises and turned cheeks in the past, as well as influential mentors and positive life lessons. So our upbringing and career histories are vastly different, yet they're ironically similar. And we keep learning this as we go on. So really, this is one more color in the crayon box as to why we founded We Built a Bridge. It's the different, it's the challenging, the triumphant, and the belonging that's behind the passion Colleen and I individually bring to the work we do. Wow, I feel like that was a bit heavy.
That was amazing.
So, on that note, and right before we get into the juice of it, we must go to our show opening icebreaker. And Colleen, you ready for it?
I'm ready. I'm excited to share.
What is your favorite holiday song and why?
Okay, so my favorite holiday song, and I actually had to Google it last night because I can hear it playing, but I just couldn't think of the darn name. It is Feliz Navidad.
Yeah.
But this is the best part of the reason, and it even just it makes me excited just saying it. Every year when we were kids, and I actually even watched it last year because I had not watched it as an adult in so long, we always watched Christmas Eve on Sesame Street. And that was one of the songs that was playing in the opening when they're all ice skating, like Big Bird and, Oscar the Grouch. And so anyways, it brings me so much joy to hear that song because it reminds me of Christmas Eve on Sesame Street.
Oh, isn't that awesome? And I love how these memories are pulled from our childhood, right? These times in our life that we were living a fantasy. I mean, it was just magical. The holidays were magical. They still are, but in a different way now as we're adults.
All right, your turn. What's yours?
Okay, so my favorite holiday song is Sleigh Ride, and very particularly by, I believe it's Johnny Mathis. So, those of our age group will really identify with Johnny Mathis. I mean, I can even see the album cover. I think he's like laying on his side on snow and he's got his, head on his hand or something. But, oh my gosh, this song is so fun. It's so energizing. And I just want to have it on replay.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it keeps going and just makes me feel so, so happy. So Sleigh Ride by, uh, oh my gosh, I just forgot his name.
That's okay. It's just a part of life.
Yes, that's right. It is. It is. So yeah. So when we finish our show, I think I'm going to have to go play it.
Yeah, I'm going to play your song too. But I want to encourage you to watch Christmas Eve on Sesame Street. So go ahead and report back tomorrow.
Awesome recommendation. Listeners, do it. All right. So let's jump in. You ready? So let's dig into when you were younger, Colleen, right? And when you now, upon reflection in your adulthood, when did you notice that the work that you do today is a reaction to what you experienced in your younger and impressionable years?
Yeah. So I'm gonna go on a little sidebar for a second because I had a networking call this morning that was so impactful that I was reminded of this phrase that I feel like I have to share because it's a perfect segue then into how I would answer this question. So on this call this morning, this person said to me, remember the Steve Jobs quote, which is, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect to your future. And it was just crazy that I had this call with him this morning and we talked about that because I knew what we were going to be talking about today. And so in keeping of, I do believe that it's a perfect segue in sharing that for when I reflect, I'm going to reflect on your question, obviously, right, and respond to it. But also just in thinking about how we've been promoting the show for today. We've been talking about, have you been unheard, unseen, and or unfulfilled, right? And so it really does go back to me reflecting and remembering, and I've been doing a lot of it this year. I started working when I was 13 years old, getting paid under the table, but that's a pretty young age to start working, but it was the option growing up in our house. We didn't have an option otherwise. And so when I think about that first job, which in hindsight, I mean, we had so much fun. I learned so much. But the unfortunate or fortunate is some of these workplace practices that I learned starting at a young age, starting at the young age 13. So my parents, they identify in the baby boomer generation. And so that generation is known for that strong work ethic, that dedication, loyalty to your job. And like, you do not go to work to have fun, even though, like I said, we had a lot of fun, right? But work is a place that you go, you respect the rules of the business owner, you respect those that have been there way longer than you, and you keep your head down. So like, when in doubt, you keep your mouth shut, because if you're not going to fall in line and do what you're told, then you need to go find another job. That's the option, because you have to work. And so I feel like when I think about that, and again, looking forward to the work that I'm doing today, a couple of things is I learned that hustle culture early. I was taught that to survive in the workplace, you had to wear a shield. So there were days at this bakery job where I would start at 6:30 in the morning. They closed at 7. My shift would typically go till 3. We didn't have lunch breaks. We were running around like maniacs. If somebody yelled at you, you couldn't show emotion. It was work. I would go in the freezer, cry, compose myself, and come back out, right? So throughout that process, I'm unfortunately like learning that in order to survive in the workplace, this is what you have to do. You don't question, you don't talk, you just keep going because it doesn't belong to you. And it's interesting, even then, if I were to then take this even like one step further after the bakery, I think about, because I mean, in hindsight, when I think about this, I think I came out of college already burned out, because I worked from 13 until I then got my quote unquote real job out of college. But I think about, unfortunately, some of those experiences that you learn early being a woman in the workplace. And that conversation can really go in two different directions. The direction that I want to take it is the unfortunate one that sometimes women can be each other's worst enemies in the workplace, right? And so that was also something that I learned about, in the workplace, that you can be burnt. That's the word that was used in our family. You can be burnt if you share something too personal that could then be used against you as almost like a tool that's hung over from a power standpoint to make or break your career. And to me, so like I'll just kind of pause there because I want to get your reactions and your reflection. But when I pause there, I think, holy smokes, none of that is okay. None of that was okay, right? Those are all, I don't think that served anybody. I think you can remove generation. I don't even think it served the generation at the time, right? And so again, when I kind of like use that reflection to then fast forward to where I am today, unfortunately, a lot of those practices still happen. A lot of those, right? Because we're afraid to talk. And and I respect that there's a level of vulnerability that we should all kind of understand what that means for us. But I do believe that there is such a big opportunity to think through some of those practices and what was maybe missing to then in turn better it going forward, to make it easier. So that's how I would answer that question of like reflection from kind of childhood learnings, because that's when I started working. But I'd love to now ask you whether it's a reflection on what I said, or if you want to just jump right into how you would answer the same question.
Oh my gosh. Well, I might even go a little bit more personal, because, all right, so here are the three main topics, right? So upon reflection, looking back to my childhood, how it shaped to where I am now is one, I'm a middle child. Yep, I'm going to go there. Middle child syndrome. Also, being engaged in team sports.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third is the fact, and I think this feeds a little bit into middle child too, is that I really didn't feel like I belonged. So from a very young age, which I just realized this in preparation for the show, that from a young age, I felt like I didn't belong.
Mm-hmm.
So to take middle child, right? So most middle children are the peacekeeper. They're the ones that perhaps aren't getting as much attention. And these are not facts, right? So this is not scientific measurement here, but a lot of people feel this way. And so I like to honor emotions than necessarily facts. So, so I had that kind of writing for me and against me, right? So if you take the positive and the negative, and then team sports, I played team sports from such a young age, and I couldn't have felt more like I fit than when I played team sports. It was that nothing was about I, everything was we won together. You can only be as strong or not as strong. Notice I didn't say weak. Strong or not as strong as your best or not as strong player. Everything is done together. And I love that. It came so naturally for me. There was nothing I loved more than celebrating my teammates, not even necessarily myself. So then going into wearing a mask, feeling like I didn't belong, it was so important for me to feel like I belonged in the future. And it really took until so many years ago until I got there. So it made me think, all right, I spent about 20 years in marketing and advertising and sales, right? Even back to my first job essentially was sales. And talk about fitting a square in a circle or vice versa, square peg, however you say it. I mean, it never fit, but you know what? Like you said, you go in, you put your head down and you earn your pay so you can pay your bills. And that's what I did. But wearing that mask got so tiring. And I started speaking up a little bit more, offering suggestions at work. And guess what? Nope, I was denied. So it just fed into the middle child syndrome of, trying to be the peacekeeper, not competing, and overall being in a career that made me feel unhappy. But one of the things that I think is so important, Colleen, is we're talking 20 years, 2 decades of having leadership, working with people as, who were my mentors, et cetera, and not one of them focused on what I had to say and what I really and uniquely brought to the table, other than the task at hand. So even though when it would come time for commissions and people would want to say, hey, team, great job. You're awesome. You're always hitting your number. I'd say, well, I'm not doing it alone. We are a team. I have, an admin that's taking the ads and mapping them and this and that. And it's like, well, okay, then you want to share your commissions. It's like, wait a second. This is not going in the direction I think. And so it just made me really think about the lack of culture within these organizations that we're not looking out for my better interest, my best interest, which ends up feeding into the success of the company. Because the better I feel about myself and belonging, the more blood, sweat, and tears I'm going to put into my role. And it's so disappointing to realize that now.
So I know we want to kind of go over to leadership, but I want to just make one quick comment. I love what you brought up. You actually are giving me like an in the moment reflection and an in the moment aha. When I think about your comment that you just made about being a middle child, right, and not really feeling, it's kind of one of those things that comes with being a middle child, that feeling of not really belonging. You're just sort of out there like doing your thing, right? And when I think about myself in the workplace, I follow the rules, but at the same time, I march to the beat of my own drum. And to me,
that almost catches me off guard. How do you do both of them, right?
So I'll be safe enough to not get in trouble, to not lose my right to still like check the boxes. But the way I'm going to march to the beat of my own drum is I am going to advocate for more. I've always been able to, and I think this also kind of comes from being a middle child because we're always sort of on the outside looking in. The roles that I have always played, I've had this higher level viewpoint that allows me to see the workplace differently. I get to wear a different set of glasses because I'm not necessarily connected to any of it so deeply. And so that marching to the beat of my own drum then has allowed me to use my voice to try to advocate for others and more. The sad part, and this is a nice kind of segue back over to leadership, the sad part is that for me in my journey, leadership didn't want to hear from me. So although they like me when I'm following the rules, or I felt like, this is my feeling, it doesn't mean it's what was happening, it's just my viewpoint, right? I felt like I was always in a good spot if I was following the rules. But as soon as I was over here ruffling the feathers, shaking, like making the waves, because I am seeing a disservice, I am seeing others being treated unfairly, there needs to be change. I'm okay using my voice for that. That's then when the pushback would always come. And so again, when I think about like, how would I reflect on how does that then transition in what I'm doing today and what I'm just no longer willing to stand for, it's I'm ready to sign on and to be with those workplaces that are like, let's shake the water. Let's make it better. And so anyways, I just wanted to go there for a second because I feel like I was having this in the moment realization about that middle child. And one of the things I do believe, again, it makes us pretty amazing.
I mean, if we have to point out the obvious, that's fine.
Yeah. So I really appreciate that. But I want to go on the other leadership conversation, but I want to just pause and ask you, was there anything else, like any other like real-time reflection that came up for you?
Well, I started to touch on it a little bit, and where I talked about how disappointing it is for me current day to what I didn't have or the opportunities I wasn't given. And really, to me, that speaks the difference between a coach and leadership. And that is truly what swayed me so much to open my eyes to say, I don't have to live this way anymore. I can improve my life because, first of all, the positive self-talk has to come into the conversation versus believing that nobody's listening to me. My ideas aren't of quality or value. And to really put that value on myself and say, there is more just because you're lacking doesn't mean I have to be lacking. And that's when, I mean, just becoming a coach just became a natural following of events. I don't know. It's like, I didn't even have to think about it. It almost landed in my lap due to what I didn't get earlier years and in my career, right? So kind of similar with you that, why everybody else? Why not me? You've talked about that. Why not me? I can do this, what? And I have great ideas instead of having people that dismiss you, which honestly makes you put that armor back up.
Mhm.
So that's a huge problem. And we bring our real lives to work. There's just no more two personalities per person.
Mhm.
Work person, home person. No, it doesn't work. I mean, I don't know how more people aren't honestly like psychotic due to that, because that's such a dual mix up of who we are.
Right.
And it just,
So
retrospect is really powerful.
it is. It is. So speaking of retrospect, you made a statement. Just because you're lacking doesn't mean, is that what you said? Just because you're lacking doesn't mean I am or I have to be?
Yeah.
So that's I feel like a perfect springboard. And then also, of course, like putting the armor back on, like when I go back and reflect about my recent, because I feel like I'm still new and I still have the story to share as to why I left the organization that I thought I would retire from at the beginning of this year. And it was because I was growing and changing. I needed more for myself. I started working with an executive coach. I started really hearing the words of our leaders beating so deep in me, which was, if you have a business idea and you feel like it's solid, come to us. We want you to feel like you have autonomy. And I was doing all of those things. I saw opportunities to grow the practice, which is now the reason, like, that's what I'm trying to do now on my own, right? But all that to say, I saw these opportunities to grow the practice, was doing the business case, doing the heavy lifting. And at the end of the day, they said, no, that's fine, but that doesn't mean that I have to stay. And so when I think about, because some might say, oh, well, just because you come with the business case doesn't mean they're going to say yes. That's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to say yes. I get that. Big risk, financial, and I get it. Cool. Those decisions that you made are okay. But I had to make this choice of, am I going to ride this wave and just enjoy the paycheck? Or am I going to take the risk and truly try to better what I don't feel is happening for myself, let alone other people in the workplace? And I did feel like I had a solid opportunity that was there. And so to your point though, about putting the armor on, I mean, you keep going and then you get beat down and you're like, okay, maybe my ideas aren't well, or maybe I don't have a good thing to say. I'm so unfulfilled, but I should be grateful. I have all this flexibility. I mean, it's this constant cycle that makes it really challenging, but I do believe it can be better. I believe there are processes and systems and things that can be changed to make it better. And I want to use my personal experiences in the professional world and my personal world to do that. So it's again, what a great reflection kind of question.
Yeah. And I mean, I love how you kind of brought that full circle with the negative self-talk, but yet being beaten down, which reaffirms your negative self-talk. So I heard something the other day, and it is so simple a sentence of simple words, but it just was like, holy cow. And the sentence is, the skill of emotional self-control is perhaps the most valuable skill you can ever acquire. So the thing is, and these are things that I work with my clients about, and it's self-worth, it's self-confidence, it's knowing how to process the emotions when they come up, because it all starts with how we think. We don't even process that thought. That is a minuscule, immediate process that comes up due to our trigger. So everything that we think is a habit. It's a habit. It's not something that we sit down and think about. and then come up with a thought. No, it's immediate. It happens. Our brain is chemically reacted to it. And then from that thought process, we move to the emotion. So based on that thought, we then develop an emotion around that thought. Well, here's the thing. Because that is an immediate chemical thought reaction, most of it may not even be true, right? Because if it's a trigger, it's coming off of when we were younger. And just to stay on course here, this is kind of going into affirming, reaffirming negative self-talk, right? So, here we are, we bring ourselves to work and we think, I'm terrible at presentations. I'm not good at them. And I'm really slow at selling. I'm not great at that. I'm not good at negotiating, right? So we go into that. And that's our immediate thought before we even take time to process it. So then the emotion is, wah, wah, I'm not good at it. I hope I don't have to work on one of those projects. And, then that's our reaction, right? But when we have the skill of emotional self-control, we can change everything in our life. It changed you, Colleen. So you said you started working with an executive coach, which doesn't surprise me of your pivot, because you at that point were more aware of your emotional self-control. You were like, wait a minute, they're saying these things, they're saying no, but I don't have to. So you caught that thought in its tracks. And you said that emotion, instead of shrugging my shoulders over and walking away with my tail between my legs, I'm going to go, wait a minute, nope, I can do better and I will do better. And that is such a beautiful gift in coaching that teaches us, which is why I love it so, so much, not only for what it did for me and my life, but for what it can do to my clients as employees, right? I mean, bringing coaching into a company changes everything. And what does every company want? What does every person want? They want to give their best. They want to give their best. And unless we nurture that with proper tools and understanding, that negative self-talk, that gut reaction, knee reaction thinking happens and then steers us off course. And off course is maybe where I went with this. I'm not sure. But, again, this whole episode is about what our core focus is. And companies that invest in their employees will 100% have higher retention, have more engaging employees, and the likelihood of higher success, it's got to be through the roof. There's no way. It's, a perfect quick example is it's like renting an apartment, right? You rent an apartment, you have to pay rent on it. You pay for it every month. So that would be the employer paying for the employee. Well, if they have to do more than important to invest in that apartment. So if they're not nurturing that apartment, then they're just throwing money away, and that, the person might leave after a year. But I went a little too far with that. We only have 2 minutes, and I know we like to honor time. And this is why this is only part one of many parts of this conversation.
Yeah. So do you want to wind us down?
Absolutely. So, all right. So as we've already prefaced, this definitely is part one of why workplace atmosphere and life coaching are our core focus for Colleen and I. And, please put your comments in. What resonates with you? What are you passionate about? What did we not talk about today that you feel has affected your life as you, in retrospect, look at where you are today? Did we touch on points that are sensitive to you? Did we get there? So our next show, of course, we are every other week, will be December 28th, Thursday, from 12 to 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. You can sign up anywhere. And personally, I would like to wish everyone a wonderful holiday season. And don't forget to put Sleigh Ride on repeat.
And Feliz Navidad. And
Feliz Navidad, yes.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Christina, it was so good to see you. I'm so excited to continue the conversation on the 28th.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.